demonstrate that cruelty, to demonstrate the level of chaos and lack of decency of this administration. All of these cuts are being done in the name of saving taxpayers' money, but we're not doing that. We literally are giving tax cuts to billionaires and racking up the biggest deficits in my lifetime under this leadership that does not have fiscal responsibility. And the best demonstration of that is allowing millions of pounds or thousands of pounds of food that were supposed to save the lives of thousands of human beings, paid for by taxpayers, to spoil on docks. How is that in any way human decency? How is that in any way showing what we stand for as a country, that we would rather watch food spoil on the docks, taxpayer money absolutely wasted, while children around this world are dying because of your inaction and that of your agency? Sir, you have not been truthful.
Welcome to America Viewpoint, where we speak the truth, defend our freedoms, and fight for the values that made this nation great. No censorship, no woke spin, just bold, unfiltered commentary from real Americans who love this country. If you're tired of the lies and ready to stand for faith, family, and freedom, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the Liberty Bell, because this is where the fight begins. Today, we're diving into an explosive moment from a recent congressional hearing where Senator Cory Booker absolutely lost it, unleashing a fiery, emotional tirade filled with accusations, contradictions, and political theater. The target of his wrath? A State Department official overseeing what Democrats now decry as a cruel reduction in force, a bureaucratic layoff of government workers. But let's pause and ask the real question. Is this righteous outrage from the left? Or is it selective outrage? Weaponized politics from the very people who've spent the last decade undermining our institutions, attacking our traditions, and enabling bloated, inefficient government to grow out of control? Let's break it down.
Senator Booker. Yeah, we're good.
I cannot tell you how frustrated I am listening to the answers that you've given here that to me are utterly unacceptable. You know that there's a number of us who have served in executive positions. We have governors, county executive, as Coons has said. I ran a city during a recession, cut 25% from my workforce overall. I know what it means to do a RIF right, but this has been chaos. It has been cruelty. And your answers, frankly, have just lacked decency, as if you don't care about a lot of the employees whose lives have been destroyed after years, if not decades, of service. Now, I want to be very specific. Clearly, you're not standing up for people who've dedicated their lives to this country, but I'm going to stand up for them. And so let's talk about some of these people in real life and what you've done. A technical security specialist who just moved all of his belongings to Pakistan. He was fired as he was heading there to ensure our embassies in the region were safe. Hours after the movers left his home, he was fired, leaving a massive security gap of this administration's making. On Friday, you fired rapid response consular officers who deployed to provide emergency services for Americans overseas. The rapid response officers you fired were both actively deployed, leaving one stranded in Colombia and the other in Ankara without access to their emails or phones and without plane tickets home. The cruelty continues. One of the officers was a veteran with 24 years of federal service who had helped Americans during the Afghanistan withdrawal and the Sudan evacuation, that deserve better from you and the United States government for their service. At a time that there's a hot war in Ukraine, and President Trump is claiming to try to foster a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia, you fired the only Ukraine intelligence analyst and Russia analyst in the Intelligence and Research Bureau. You fired the executive director of the National Authority for Chemical Weapons Convention while we are trying to get the new government in Syria to locate and destroy remaining stockpiles of chemical weapons that threaten the security of that region and us. You fired human trafficking experts, including everyone with human trafficking experience in the Middle East, North Africa, and South and Central Asia, as if that is not an urgent crisis amongst humanity and for this nation. apart from the national security implications of all of these firings, despite the cruel way that you guys executed them, the human toll is also staggering. One of the human trafficking experts you fired, showing the level of cruelty of your actions, has a wife who was just fired by USAID. She's pregnant. And now he just got fired as well. Two people trying to start their family with no income and now even their health insurance in limbo, who gave years of service to this country. You even fired all the staff at the Office of Casualty Assistance who are charged with repatriating fallen State Department personnel and their families, including those working on behalf of employees killed in the Benghazi attacks. We have a solemn and sacred duty to bring home bodies of American citizens who die while serving their countries and helping their help their families. It's a sacred obligation. Every major corporation I know, we've talked about business sector, knows that the most valuable thing they can do is get a pipeline of talent and personnel. I've talked to CEOs who've told me they spend between 25% and a third of their time recruiting talent, but despite telling us that the recruitment office would face no cuts, on Friday you fired the entire recruitment division, lying to us and eliminating that pipeline of talent. To the civil service and foreign officers who are watching this right now, hoping they can get some justification for the chaos you've created, for the cruelty you've put into place, for the lack of decency, I'm going to tell those folks right now that we are going to stand up for each and every one of those folks and fight for them at a time that China is doubling down on their investments in diplomatic corps, trying to fill every void that we create. You are devastating our corps, hurting Americans, undermining our sacred mission as well. And again, I don't trust you, Mr. Regas. Yesterday you said no one at Council Affairs would be fired. That's false. Over 100 Consular Affairs officers were fired. Again, you said no one with overseas assignments would be fired. That also is not true. I have examples of employees riffed all over this country who've had orders in hands. And we were told no diplomatic security agents would be fired. And again, not true. We are the United States Senate. We have an obligation for oversight, and you showed over the House hearing that even your statements lack veracity. I'm telling you right now, we are in a crisis in this country if you won't come here and represent facts. And to demonstrate that cruelty, to demonstrate the level of chaos and lack of decency of this administration, all of these cuts are being done in the name of saving taxpayers' money, but we're not doing that. We literally are giving tax cuts to billionaires and racking up the biggest deficits in my lifetime under this leadership that does not have fiscal responsibility. And the best demonstration of that is allowing millions of pounds or thousands of pounds of food that were supposed to save the lives of thousands of human beings, paid for by taxpayers, to spoil on docks. How is that in any way human decency? How is that in any way showing what we stand for as a country, that we would rather watch food spoil on the docks, taxpayer money absolutely wasted, while children around this world are dying because of your inaction and that of your agency? Sir, you have not been truthful. You are showing a lack of decency to people who've given decades of service, veterans. You've upended families. This is not the way we operate. It is not the decency that they deserve. And I will stand up and fight you in every way to make sure that the people you have hurt get from this country what they deserve: respect and honor. Thank you.
Senator Shaheen.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, you may.
I am deeply distressed by everything you just said.
I'm distressed by everything you've done,
Excuse
sir.
me.
I've watched you lie to this committee.
You
I've watched
did
you
not.
lie on the House side.
You did not.
I'm sorry, sir.
If you were here when I addressed Senator Merkley on that consular affairs statement, I told him immediately after that, the next sentence after that in my House testimony, I
What about the other
clarified
lies that I've said? I've
that-
pointed out. What about the other lies?
Diplomatic.
You want to go through them one by one?
Diplomatics, sir. Mr. Chairman, can I respond to the question?
You may respond.
We did not let go any diplomatic security personnel that were engaged in law enforcement functions. We did not let go any consular affairs personnel who were engaged in adjudicating passports. Mr. Chairman, can I answer the question, please? This is outrageous.
Senator Booker, please let...
Sir, what is outrageous is your behavior.
So I will tell you, we gave humanitarian exceptions.
Senator, please let Mr. Regas respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We let individuals who were RIF'd, by the way, they're still on payroll, they're still getting pay and benefits, civil servants for the next 60 days, foreign service officers for the next 120 days, and then the other individuals who had requested compassionate exceptions because of medical or family issues were granted. And I can tell you that is in stark contrast to what I experienced when I was the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management at the end of the first Trump administration, when we requested of the incoming Biden administration that appointees who were pregnant, who had babies, some in the NICU, we said, could they please, because they were legally entitled to have family and medical leave for 12 weeks, sir.
Is to blame Biden.
Weeks.
I've heard this time and time
No, you
again.
have
Is
not.
to blame
You've
Biden.
never heard
Sir,
this before, sir, because it's never been entered into the congressional record.
You're trying to delay,
I would like
you're
the
trying
ability
to deny,
respond.
and you're trying to denigrate this committee by not telling the truth. Sir, I want to enter the record literally an impeachment of what he just said. May I enter into the record this document demonstrating that he did indeed fire people who were in charge of doing technical work for the security of our people overseas. You lied to this committee.
I did not,
and
sir.
I'd like
I
to
just
enter
told
this
you.
into the record.
Okay, just a minute. Senator Booker, you are allowed to enter it on the record.
Thank you very much.
So if we could, Mr. Regas, please respond, and then we're going to move on.
I pointed out 4 factual errors where you lied to this
not,
committee.
sir.
I'm happy to listen if you go through each one.
As I've said
Senator
repeatedly
Booker,
in this
thank
committee, sir,
you. I just want to allow Mr.
Thank you.
Regas to respond, and then Senator Shaheen then has a couple more
Thank
questions.
you.
We'll wrap
So,
up.
as I've said repeatedly during this committee, and maybe you weren't here to hear that testimony, obviously people were let go from their jobs. It's a reduction in force. We had 13 people who were let go. That does not mean the function that they performed was necessarily eliminated. These functions that we wanted to move forward were carried on either in a combined bureau or in another office where those redundant functions were carried out. We said diplomatic security that was conducting law enforcement, there were no reductions in that law enforcement function. Consular affairs folks who were adjudicating passports, who were doing the customer service work that we want to see continue, were not reduced or eliminated. People who were in domestic positions is where these reductions in force were done.
But, sir, he's contradicting his own territory. You said that's regrettable, that there were at least 200 people that you at least showed some shred of decency.
I'm saying it's regrettable. Look, no one wants...
So you've made mistakes.
No, I'm saying...
Sir, so you have made mistakes.
What I'm
made no
expressing,
mistakes.
sir...
You're literally saying you've made no mistakes.
Senator Booker, thank you. I want to... Mr. Regas, clearly this is going to go back and forth
Right.
here. I'd like you to maybe to respond maybe in 30 seconds, and we'll have Senator Shaheen.
I think you should respond to questions for the record, sir.
Thank you.
I'm happy to
He's
respond
speaking on
to
the
questions.
record.
Look,
so.
Look, no one wants to lay someone off. I don't think we take any joy in laying people off or any kind of reduction in force, but we have to do what's best for the mission. We have to do what's best for the organization. The department has grown by 20,000 people since 2008. We're literally we let go 1,300 people. Every single one of those is hard for those individuals, for their families. You know, I've experienced unemployment in my life. I know what that's like. It's not pleasant for anyone, but we have to put the mission first, and we have to make sure the critical functions we want to execute are going to be done, and they're going to be done with respect to taxpayers in the United States. So
I find that insulting, demeaning, degrading to the people whose lives you've upended unjustifiably.
Yeah.
To put yourself out there.
Senator Shaheen, next round of question.
So here's what happened. The Biden administration, yes, the very one Democrats champion, oversaw a reduction in force at the State Department. Around 1,300 positions were eliminated. That includes diplomatic security, consular affairs, intelligence officers, and even the entire recruitment division. Lives were disrupted, families hurt, and morale shattered. But suddenly, Senator Booker, a man who has cheered on radical expansions of government and shrugged at the erosion of individual liberties, finds his conscience. He sits in a hearing and calls these cuts cruel, chaotic, and inhumane. Where was this outrage when small businesses were crushed by lockdowns? Where was this compassion when Americans were fired for refusing medical mandates? Where was this fight when our Border Patrol was overwhelmed and demonized? Senator Booker described real stories. People fired while heading overseas to protect embassies. Officers left stranded in Colombia and Turkey without a way home. A veteran with 24 years of service dismissed without ceremony. Even a pregnant woman and her husband both laid off, stripped of income and health insurance. And listen, we aren't blind to the human cost. Every American deserves dignity, especially those who've served this nation faithfully. But let's be clear, this didn't happen in a vacuum. This is the result of years of failed priorities, failed leadership, bloated departments, ineffective oversight, and it's been made worse by the very political class now pretending to be outraged. Booker had the nerve to claim this was all about saving taxpayer money, only to turn around and blast the administration for letting thousands of pounds of food aid rot on the docks. You know what? He's right about one thing. The waste is real. But it didn't start with a reduction in force. It started with the endless blank checks, the reckless spending, the COVID slush funds, and the billions we send overseas while our veterans sleep in tents on American soil. We've spent more fighting for other people's borders than defending our own. We fund gender studies programs in foreign nations, but can't secure clean water in Flint, Michigan. And now, suddenly, this administration pretends to care about efficiency. That's not leadership, that's surrender. Surrender to incompetence. Surrender to globalism. Surrender to the bureaucratic elite who never face the consequences of their own policies. Booker pounded the table about truth. He accused the witness of lying to the House and Senate. He demanded accountability for conflicting statements about who would and wouldn't be fired. And maybe he's got a point. There were contradictions. But the righteous fury rings hollow. Where was this passion when American citizens were left stranded in Afghanistan? Where was this fire when whistleblowers testified about abuse in federal agencies? Where was this urgency when parents were labeled domestic terrorists for speaking out at school board meetings? The truth is, Cory Booker and his party only get animated when the chaos they created comes back to haunt them politically. It's not about truth. It's not about justice. It's about optics. And frankly, we're not buying it anymore. Perhaps the most damning consequence of this mess is how it weakens our national strength. While China is doubling down on building its global diplomatic footprint, the United States is cutting critical analysts and regional experts. The very people who understand threats from Russia, North Korea, Syria, and beyond. Booker even admitted that the sole Ukraine and Russia analysts in one bureau were fired. At a time when a war in Europe threatens stability, we're trimming our capacity to understand it. That's not reform. That's retreat. And yet the same folks pushing for diversity officers, climate envoys, and DI task forces want to lecture us about what's essential. What happened to putting America first? One of the most shocking parts of this entire episode? The shutdown of the State Department's recruitment office, the very mechanism for identifying and training future Foreign Service officers. Let that sink in. At a time when we need new, smart, capable Americans to rise up and serve, we're eliminating the path for them to do so. And the excuse? Bureaucratic efficiency. Budget cuts. But here's the deal. Every major corporation in America knows that recruiting talent is mission critical. But our own government is cutting off its pipeline. And it took a Democrat senator to point out, we're the rest. This is how nations fall, not with explosions, but with silence and incompetence. Now to the man in the hot seat, Mr. Rigas. He claimed the firings were limited, targeted, and justified. He said those who were let go still had pay and benefits for 60 to 120 days. He insisted no law enforcement agents were fired, no core consular work interrupted. But his answers felt more like legal cover than moral clarity. Because even if technically true, the stories Booker cited were real. Families were hurt, veterans blindsided, personnel stranded. And instead of accountability, we got bureaucratic spin. And then, of course, he blamed the Trump administration. Because that's the go-to move every time the heat is turned up. Never take responsibility. Just deflect. But America sees through it. We're sick of the blame game. What we want is bold, decisive leadership. So let's step back. Yes, there's legitimate frustration here. No one wants to see good people laid off, especially not patriots who've served honorably in dangerous parts of the world. But Booker's rage wasn't righteous. It was political theater. Because if he and his party truly valued civil servants, they wouldn't have pushed COVID mandates that fired thousands. They wouldn't have let veterans languish without care. They wouldn't have forced DEI quotas into our armed forces while our enemies laughed. This is what happens when the mission of government shifts from serving the American people to serving political agendas. And now the cracks are showing. To those watching, don't be distracted by the noise. Focus on the pattern. This is about more than one committee hearing. This is about whether America stands strong or buckles under the weight of bloated bureaucracy, failed priorities, and political cowardice. We must demand accountability, not just from unelected officials, but from the senators who posture in hearings yet vote to expand the very systems they pretend to oppose. We must protect our institutions, not the corrupt machines, but the principles they were built on. And most of all, we must honor those who serve, whether they wear a uniform abroad or work in silence in the heart of Washington. Because if we don't stand up for them now, the soul of this nation slips further away. This is America Viewpoint, where we don't whisper, we roar. We stand tall, speak loud, and never back down from defending truth and liberty. If this message fired you up, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the fight for America doesn't end when the video does. Until next time, stay strong, stay free, and may God bless the United States of America.